Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Ellen Seigel here, and
Jeannine, Vegh.
yes, we're two counselors, psychotherapists, and we come together in these enlightening conversations. There's nothing. What shall I say? This isn't a class. No one's going to be tested. The best way to be with us about this is to pretend you're in this conversation, have whatever thoughts come up for you, and we're sharing from our background, our experience, and yeah, our training too. So today we feel like talking about dreaming. So, and a good way to start, I don't know, is what it means to each one of us. I don't know. How does that sound, Jeannine?
What did you say?
How does that sound? Starting with what it means to us.
What it means to us. Yeah. Sorry, that's what I missed.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
I can. So, I don't know, in my life, sometimes there have been periods where I remembered my dreams. Talking about dreams after I go to sleep at night, which is not that different from daydreaming. And I do want to talk about that at some point also.
Okay.
So dreaming for me was like going to sleep at night and sort of waking up in another reality. And it's a lot like the movies, only not looking like it has any rhyme or reason. Sometimes things look like they're connected. When my husband dreams, and he's great, I mean, he wakes up and he tells me and he laughs about this and that. And so that he always ties it to something either that he thought during the day or something that somebody reminded him of, some things like that. Mine, I never really thought about like that. Just pretty interesting. And I might wake up in the morning and not remember any of it. I would say probably I've heard that people dream every night, and even if they're not aware of it. So sometimes I'm aware of it, sometimes I'm not. And then I was instructed by a teacher to have a pad by my bed and to set the intention before I would go to sleep. I would like to remember the dream, and then I need to write it immediately. So if I wake up in the middle of the night, because so many times I said, oh, I'll remember it, go back to sleep and not have a clue. and then later look at it to see if I could decipher any meaning about it. And I hope that we'll have time to talk about how we've each come to what you do with a dream if you remember it and how to look at it. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit of what I could share.
Well, the reason why we are doing this talk today is because that's where my head was at today. I'm still in a dream consciousness state of mind right now. As I was telling you before we turned on the recording, I have been dreaming since I was a little girl, and I knew as a little girl that the dreams meant something. And so as a little girl, I was constantly dreaming different things, and I would think about them all day long and think about the wonderment of me being able to be that person in the middle of the night when I was sleeping. I've had situations occur where I don't know if I was in a sleep state or not. I swear I was awake, but I was a little girl, and I remember falling out of the ceiling one time while I was upstairs for a nap as a little girl. And I've always felt that really happened, that I was really falling from the ceiling, like I could feel it. And there are times when I have felt like I was falling onto the floor, and I would catch myself before I would fall. Like it would just be this startlement in my dream. But the most fascinating thing about dreams is that I learned from an early age to listen to other people's dreams. And then I would tell them what it meant. It was just something that I did. And recently in the last, well, it ended a year ago, but for about 4 or 5 years, I was in a dream group with about 3 different people. And we actually would bring in a dream when we met monthly, and we would discuss it with each other and talk about our feelings that were coming up from each of these dreams. And we got I went through a lot in that group. Like it was, I joked one time that it was like having a Bible study, except for we were dreaming, and we were talking about our dreams philosophically and what each of us brought to the table. So it was a very deep, intricate, intimate conversation over those years as we got to know each other. I said 3 people, but there was actually 4. There was actually 4 because the moderator, he didn't bring in his dreams, but he was a therapist, and he brought in his wisdom, but he didn't bring in his dreams. So interpreting dreams is very important to me. Listening and helping other people to understand their dreams, I love doing that. To me, it's like when somebody, like, for example, when I'm talking to a client and they tell me their dream, I sort of like, as I'm listening to them, I'm in the dream and I can actually see it and be a part of it. And then I'm able to ask questions and I'm able to walk through it with them. But that's what dreams are for me. They're the unconscious sending us messages, and and they're lessons that we need to learn. And until we learn those lessons, we won't stop having that dream. As in reoccurring dreams.
That's something. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Keep going.
That's something that I learned a while ago, that when I would learn the lesson of the dream, because it began to occur to me, oh, if I learn this, I won't have the dream anymore. And it happened. I would learn the lesson and I wouldn't have the dream anymore.
So from what you just said, and this may sound like I'm going on a tangent here, but I'm not, because here the concept of dreaming, as we're talking about it, provides insight into a way to view life in general. That when a person finds situations or experiences that they're having that are recurring, that are mystery to them or trouble to them, that what you just said, that you learned about in the context of dreams, that is a great principle to go through life, whether you're dreaming after you fall asleep at night or living the drama of our supposedly awake life here. And that is that, oh, this is recurring because there must be something in it that I still get to learn from. And then when those, I call them threads of those lessons, have been acquired or received, or I don't like the term accomplished, but that goal of learnings has been received, then that kind of situation doesn't necessarily occur anymore in that way. Mm-hmm. It sort of dissolves, like you were saying. Those dreams, the recurring theme dreams, stop happening. So that's brilliant.
Because it's like our unconscious is like desperately trying to tell us something. It's like, my spiritual teacher, I had this boyfriend many years ago, and he kept having these accidents, different kinds of accidents. And she said, he just isn't getting it. He keeps having these things happening to him, and he's not waking up his consciousness. He's not, trying to give him a message, and he's not getting it. And it's the same thing. She wasn't really big on dreams like I am. But yeah, she could see signs in people in life. I see it in the dreams. And I find that I have found that with people who are closed-minded, they don't seem to dream that much. And I'll hear them saying, oh, I never dream. And I think, oh, okay. But yeah, it's very interesting. But I love dreams. I find them so fascinating. Sometimes they can be humiliating. Sometimes they can be dramatic. Sometimes they can be bizarre, things that you would never do in the real world. But they're just, and they are very, it's like a movie. It's like you're watching a movie. And sometimes I think, oh, I would love to turn this into a story, but it's not for that reason. It's for me. It's for me to learn that lesson, and I've got to figure it out.
So I'll bet that there have been movies and stories written based on dream inspirations, and then filled out also. One of the ways that
especially Fellini. Have you ever watched his movies?
Some.
Okay, so you have a sense.
Well, and artists, visual artists of in paintings and whether abstract or not abstract. So I'm thinking about Picasso.
Yes. Well, yeah, I think that's more mental illness. I don't know.
Well, wait a minute. I had a client who was in who put themselves in for some treatment into an inpatient facility and came out with some very, very interesting observations. And I know that there have been studies on this about the I don't know whether it's the mystery of, quote, mental illness or things like that. There can be a very fine line between all levels of creativity, I'll put it that way. And so there's so many things in this that our conversation already has brought to my mind, like altered states of consciousness. Like when we're in a dream after we've gone to sleep and it seems so real. And that sometimes some of us have those kinds of experiences during the day. Also, where all of a sudden you look around and, either the light is shining a certain way on something or so whether you call it a spiritual experience, a mystical experience, an otherworldly experience, whether it's experiencing something as so profound that you actually might forget that your feet are planted on the earth. So, sure, you always want to check something out if you're having something, I don't want to call it weird or unusual perceptual experience, but not to underestimate that it might be a higher consciousness experience. So I wanted to say that. The other thing, so when I've been taught in a few different ways to help myself and help others sort of decode their dreams. Like you, I get a picture, an image, a perception of what it could be for the other person. And certainly if they've come to me for a reading, then they can have that. Otherwise, I use it sort of as a guide to the questions that I ask, which you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's so interesting. I love when we find similarities, and I'm enriched by the differences in how we work, Jeannine. I love it.
Yeah.
And how we work with ourselves too. So one of the ways that was very interesting, so I was taught that a dream, that we are the director, the creator, the writer. We write the script in the dream for all the participants in the dream. So, I mean, a person can try that on as an avenue to decode, well, gee, so I'm playing that part and a part of me is playing that part, so to get more awareness, and then you toss out what doesn't resonate with you or doesn't fit.
That's a Jungian perspective where you put every single person in the dream is you, and you identify, you talk to the person about how do you identify as this or this or this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if someone wants to read more about that, look for the stuff written by Carl Jung.
Yeah.
Another way, which could be off of that, is that you can put yourself in sort of a relaxed state as you're thinking about the dream, and ask elements of the dream what that element thinks the dream is about. Mm-hmm. So if in a dream, you're in a room and there's a coffee table and a lamp, you can ask the lamp what its view of the dream is. Mm-hmm. And different parts of the picture. Mm-hmm. So that was always an interesting thing. And you get a lot of interesting information that way.
You can. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, and all of that serves, the purpose of it is just to open one's mind to possibilities. And then you might have, so different things might click so that with certainty, oh, that's what that meant. Or, oh, I could do this in a situation, or it's just an awareness. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say about that.
I'm a symbol person. So I love symbols. And so I like looking at the objects that come up in the dream and talking about the symbolism of, excuse me, the symbolism of the car driving down the street and somebody else is driving. So it's like they're in control and you're not. Or you're standing over a cliff and you're thinking of, you feel yourself falling. And people often, the most feared thing about tarot and about dreams are the death, dying in a dream. and it's like, it's not about death. It's about, unless you're having a prophetic dream that you're having a plane crash and you're dying in the plane crash and you're getting ready to fly on a plane. And that doesn't necessarily mean it was a prophetic dream either. Just so that anybody who's just had one might be afraid, you kind of know when it's a prophetic dream. But anyway, now, where was I? I was talking about the car and driving forward and somebody else is in control. Oh, death. I was talking about death. So when you're dying in a dream or you see the death card in tarot, it's about transformation. It's about the death of the ego. So there's a part of you, there's a part of something inside of you that's dying. And that's what makes people afraid, because they think it's that I'm going to die, but they are. Something's going to die inside of them, and they're so afraid of that change that's about to occur. So that's what's fascinating to me about dreams, is the symbols that come up and what do they mean. It's funny, I remember many years ago in the 80s, I was on a hike with some women in Rough and Ready, California. and a girl was telling me a dream that had something to do with her hands. And she was talking about all these things going on in the dream with her hands. And I said, are you having some problems with your hands? Is there anything going on with your hands that you would have this dream? Because that's what's coming to me. And at first she sort of denied it and said no, because nothing was being called to her attention at the time. But later on in the hike, she started talking about having this, not Alzheimer's. When you get that thing in your hand, the pain, arthritis. So she started talking about arthritis. And I was like, that's the dream. That's what I was asking you earlier. I asked you if you had something going on with your hands. And she's like, oh, because I think it was like a dream where she was having swords going into her hands or something. I can't remember it because it was 30 years ago or whatever. But it was just funny to me that it was, but it also helped me to realize later on that sometimes in the moment we just draw a blank. I mean, she knew she had arthritis. I asked her if she had anything wrong with her hands, but in the moment she was so focused on the image from the dream that she couldn't think outside of the box. She couldn't focus on reality. She was too focused on the dream. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's very interesting to me too. I just love dealing with the symbols, the symbolism.
In that example that you gave, when her attention was connected with her arthritis and the idea of the dream, did she make some connection there? Did she get that when you said, oh, that was the dream?
Yeah.
She did get it.
Yeah. She finally, it took her a minute because it was like, she was thinking about it and it was kind of like it was kind of like the dream world and the real world were starting to come together. And then you could kind of see like, oh, okay. It's just,
so what's great for who's ever watching this, that is an example of whether it's with a friend or a trained person who you're going to for help, or a tarot card reader, or a book on symbols or something like that. The benefit of reaching out, because here, and here was in a casual way. I mean, people come to us for this. It's like, what connections are there in the person that they don't see? So to know that we have that. So, and you and I both work on ourselves in ways that we reach out to others. So we know the value of it, and it is extraordinary. It's like, oh, I know this and that, but I don't see how this goes together. And then someone else could say, oh, well, you mentioned this and you mentioned that. And then you make the connection. And that is a value in whether you call it introspection, expanding your self-awareness, whatever this is. And I'm thinking these enlightening conversations, whatever you take from it, use it to open yourself up further.
Yeah. And sometimes you do need a guide because, like I said, you can get stuck in that dream world. And you go throughout your day and you're still in that dream world. You're still like in this, you're still in bed, but yet you're walking around in the daytime. And sometimes you do need that guide where you can just say, take me out of this dream. Tell me what's going on here. I'm not getting it. I'm not understanding this. Or I just had this really amazing thing that came out in my dream, and I just want to know what it means.
Right.
The
I don't know. I feel like you've heard this too. somewhere in our backgrounds, whether in self-help or in the training, it's like the question of, is this the dream? And is that the reality? And so that offers insight into how to look at our daily lives. I love symbols. And so actually in the awake part, the earth awake part,
Mm-hmm.
I've sort of trained myself to see everything as symbolic, because what that means is that each thing can be opened,
Mm-hmm.
and it has so much more meaning. I've been a person who, my father died when I was 18, and something happened there for me that put me into an overdrive about experiencing as much as I could or enjoying as much as I could in life, not knowing when it might be over. Because with my father, I experienced it as abruptly and didn't really have a sense of a broader spiritual sense about life. So nevertheless, it served me well and put me on a path of decoding meaning for myself about everything. So I'm one of those people who experiences meaning in everything. So I think that's what I was looking for on the heels of my father's death. And so looking at things as symbols has been very rich for me. Yeah. And in dreams and nighttime dreams, it's all symbols. And so I'm also fascinated with it that way.
Yeah. And it's fun to work with people to help them have realizations about their dreams and what they mean. And it's nice when you are able to calm them down and help them to realize, no, you're not going to die. There's a part of you that is going to die. What is trying to shift inside of you? And then having them talk about that. Or with abuse victims, survivors, and the monster that keeps chasing after them, or their uncle or whatever, that keeps chasing after them, and they can't get that out of their head, and until we do some work around it, and then suddenly they don't have that dream anymore.
Yeah, it's a great avenue of healing.
Yeah. Being lost in dreams. Oh man, I had dreams. I've had dreams like that before, trying to find grandma's house. Those are interesting dreams to have too. But you wake up feeling so sad, you know, was that grandma's house? I really wanted to be there and be in that home again. That kind of thing. When my spiritual teacher died, I had some dreams of going back to her home where she lived where she was living when I first met her, not when she died. And because that place was kind of like where we began our friendship. And so I would go back to her home in Ocean Beach, California, and in the dream, and I would be in this home and she wasn't there. And I would just be sitting in there in the dream, just taking in the memories and, that sort of thing.
Also, when a person's writing their dreams down, to include how they felt in the dream.
Yes.
And then there's another component toward the end, which you can note, is how you feel when you're reviewing the dream. How you feel about the dream, how you feel about what was happening in the dream. So that's like another layer or level that you can gain insight through.
Yeah, and to also keep in mind that when you're coming out of the dream, your ego is now taking over. So you've got to be cautious there as something we brought up a lot in our dream group was that, because sometimes you can have a dream and you wake up and you're still sort of creating the dream as you're waking up.
Mm-hmm.
But is that really the dream, or is that your ego trying to repair what happened in the dream and to tell yourself, to finish the conversation with the person, or to imagine that this is being orchestrated to continue, so we'd have to like really look at that and decipher that. Well, was that when you were waking up, or was that when you were still asleep?
Very important. Very important.
Yeah, very important. And so, yeah. And we called it the dream image. That's what we would, that's the way we determined the symbols. What was the dream? We would call it the dream image. And the dreaming state of the dreaming state.
The other thing that I didn't know for a long time was that, and this is a different kind of practice, and we can even talk about this in another meeting together, the idea that yes, the ego is coming in so there is a way to expand that state before the ego comes in and can be conscious about it. And I think that your comment really brings us and our viewers in touch with the fact that the ego is there. We wake up and the ego is moving in to, get us active in whatever, I'll call it lower thinking, which is a capacity that we have. These are all valuable traits. And ideally through our growth, we're learning how to master, if we want to stay in the state before the ego comes in, or we want to employ the ego for certain things, that we're actually in charge of all that. And we may not master that or get to that till later, but it's good to know that that's part of our path.
And I want to add to what you're saying by telling people that are listening to this, it's not wrong because the ego gets involved.
Right.
But you do want to discern between, was I in the ego state or was I still in the dreaming state? You want to be conscious of that when you're discussing that with somebody, and even just discussing it with yourself. What was really happening in my dream at night, and what was really something I added to it as I woke up.
Right.
Because as soon as you start writing it down, you're writing it down like you're awake, you're writing it down, and you're suddenly trying to go back and remember the images. But sometimes those will be altered as you're writing it down.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yeah, well, we've talked about this before. Sometimes putting things in words dilutes it, whatever it is, and that's, I think, unavoidable, at least from where I'm sitting now.
Exactly. I don't think you're ever going to get it perfect.
Or pure.
Yeah, it was pure when you slept and it came to you in that moment. But the minute you woke up and you took a shower or had breakfast or whatever, suddenly it was being diluted. Yeah. So.
Yeah. What else? I wanted to say about symbolism. So sometimes, or often, I should say often, I have an idea of what something symbolizes, and I hold that in abeyance, and help the person who's come to me for help for this, by asking questions about what it symbolizes, what something symbolizes for them. And I took this great training called Clean Language. And the author, my teacher, who's written some books on that, Gina Campbell, her books, the tagline is mining the metaphors, and with your client. And so the questions are very, very general, like, let's say that use the example about the car with the driving, someone else is driving. So when in a car like that, what is the meaning of being in a car like that, where the person knows what that is? And yes, we're referring to them being in the passenger seat, but very interesting things will come to that person that are different from saying, so, what do you think it means that you're in the passenger seat?
Mm-hmm.
Because then they may tell you other things about how it was they got into the passenger seat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the next kind of question is, can you say anything else about that, where you're not even saying what it is that they're saying? Because I come from a feedback model where originally I was taught to say, well, is this what you're saying? And you repeat the words of the person. Well, here you're assuming that they've got all these symbols and symbolic meaning in their consciousness. So I'm just asking what that means to them. And they have a particular that in mind that I can't even conjure up. I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that stream of things is like, and is there anything else to say about that? And it can go on and on and on. And the person has such depth of meaning that, wow, it's really phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And they get the benefit of it because it's filling out pictures inside themselves. And I've heard from the person afterwards, like, oh my God, I didn't really know how extensive, my understanding of something was, or how limiting I was thinking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with studying ourselves in our daily experiences, studying ourselves in relationship to our dreams. The benefit of having a broader awareness is certainly to have a better experience in life. I mean, people are looking for happiness and relief from pain and, ease and enjoyment. And the other thing it gives you, the more awareness you have, the more awake you are in decisions that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
Even about ways to think. Oh, you know what? I don't want to think this anymore. It's driving me crazy. Oh, okay. And it puts you in a position where you can actually make a decision about it. So the more and more awareness you have, the better your life can be.
Exactly. And to add to that again, the more awareness that you have, you're able to handle pain and suffering.
Right.
Because you're working with your dreams, you're working with your teachers, your guides, your faith, what have you. And it's like, I won't say that the journey is shorter necessarily, but it's like you're flowing with it.
Right.
You're flowing.
It doesn't necessarily shorten your journey on the planet. No.
In fact,
go ahead.
I think it can even be longer when you're more aware, because you're more focused on those symbols and you're wanting to sometimes hold on to it for a little bit just so that you can experience it a little bit more deeply, to be really clear what it is. I think that's part of why my journey was so long this year, because there were so many things that I got from it. And it sort of transformed me as a therapist, because it was like I experienced different states of consciousness during this year And it was like, oh, that's what it feels like, you know? And then when I hear my clients talking about it, I already have, I'm having a little bit of a sense of it, tiny bit of a sense. Well, but anyway, so you brought up daydreaming.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, yes. I didn't want to forget about that because that's interesting. Daydreaming, dissociation.
Right.
So, yeah.
So here are some things that, well, there's two things. One, I'll say, so I was always criticized by one of my parents. Stop daydreaming, stop daydreaming. So this, you know how you hear something and it can just unhook you from something that had been bothering you for a very long time. Well, there's many things about that episode that I just shared that are symbolic of being criticized by my parent, feeling like I'm doing the wrong thing, feeling like I'm wasting my time, not using my brain the right way. I'm just saying that symbolizes all those. When I think about that, it symbolizes those things and other things, I'm sure, for me. And then somewhere later on, I'm reading in some spiritual book, something about imagination is the thought of God. Imagination. Now that's just a stray thought in some book that I read. And when I read that, I didn't know that I was going to have a releasing experience.
I love that.
And it didn't even go through my brain. I mean, I was using my brain to read and I'm going, imagination. And what clicked through was my looking out the window and daydreaming. So all of a sudden, something I had judged myself for my whole life and had often thought of myself as not imaginative, not artistic, not creative, because that was all part of my negative thinking about myself. Yeah. All of that, like it went, it just like dissolved. Yeah. So, and whatever anybody can use from that to honor whatever experience that we're having. And you mentioned dissociation. I have a close friend who, during a very abusive situation when she was a child, thank God, yes, she dissociated. She dissociated, maybe I mentioned this once before, into the cracks in the ceiling. Did I tell you about this? And in her artwork as an adult, she had an awareness because she drew with the finest lines in colored pencils as an artist. Wow. And one day in her growth, I'm having goosebumps now, she had the realization that those fine lines were the cracks in the ceiling. And I don't know if that she discovered that in a dream or if she was in a dreamy state, on the earth. So, you know,
dissociation is a very comforting place for an abuse survivor. And, you know, I have spent my life dissociating, so I can attest to that. But yeah, I mean,
expertise.
So growing up in an abusive household, I turned to books, and of course, I didn't know I was an empath at that time. But I would read these books, and like a dream. It was like I could see the images, and there would be times when I would be so engrossed in the book that I would be in that village or that time period. And it was just like I would be so consumed with those images. And that's where my mind would go, was I would be there. And it was such a release of tension, of all the tension that was around me. To be in Wuthering Heights, or to be in Jane Eyre, or to be, which Jane Eyre is my favorite, or to be in Gone with the Wind, or what have you, to just really, you know, and they talked so much about the images in those classic works. So they would get into so much detail about the flowers on the wallpaper, and talking about you know, the chandelier, or the porch, and pages talking about the decorations in the house. And it was so easy to like just be there, because you could feel it when they would talk about the sensations of the velvet wallpaper, or the velvet drapes, or what have you. You could feel it, and you could immerse yourself in it, because it was like they were wrapping it around you with their language of the book. And so it just, it completely shut off what was going on around me, the tension and the energy and so forth. Because back then I didn't know about sage cleansing and and how to like let go of the energy that's on your body. And I didn't know any of that stuff, or taking a walk or what have you. So yeah, so I had to immerse myself in those books.
So I can relate to that. And something interesting has just come to mind, and that is that I wonder if all children, or we as children, don't have that ability. I mean, you know, and when you think about little children and they're in their world developing language, and if you allow yourself to watch a child explore things, I'm wondering if that's not a wonderful thing for parents to do, to read to children actually things that are more complex than you think that they could take in. And whether that's the classics, or my son had a friend. We had a friend when my son was very little, and his father was reading him the Greek classics.
Wow.
And you know, that particular child grew up to electively take Latin in high school, when Latin was offered in high school, and, you know, went on and had, I mean, a terrific life of imagery. And to my knowledge, didn't have the path of a survivor of abuse, that was just, so here you and others have stumbled into a wonderful saving grace, immersing oneself in the written works of others. And somebody might be in musical works or other artistic works. And yeah, in your path, I mean, your path is such a beautiful path to me, you know, and how it leads, and then later it's smudging, and, you know, all the other things that we've learned.
They actually, I have read that if you read to your child at an early age, they will learn to read much faster. So I think there is something to what you're saying, that it isn't, and I don't think you should be reading them Dick and Jane books. You should be reading them the classics. And I remember teachers reading us stories in class. But also, I don't know if it's a California thing or not, but that's where I heard about it. There's this thing. No, I guess it's national, because it was called National TV, Turn Off Your TV Week. And they did an article in the paper where they were talking about the family turning off the TV for the week. And during that week, the children picked up a violin and started learning how to play, and some other things that were happening. They were coming together as a family and playing games and things like that. What a coincidence. I mean, it's like in those classic novels, they didn't have television or radio. And so they were having to create games for themselves. They were having to put on skits, just all kinds of lovely things, taking walks, enjoying nature, getting to know one another out in society by taking a walk and seeing your neighbors. Just so many, I think those kind of things are so rich, and we've just lost all of that in our society today. So all we have is our dreams, I think sometimes.
Oh, which brings up the other thought that I had earlier, which was, I don't know which wise person said this, whether about how that this is a spiritual perspective, that coming onto the earth plane, let's say as a soul, for those of you who relate to that kind of information, that this life here is a dream, and we created it for the purpose of playing things out, learning lessons. And I have a teacher who said, and have a great time. So, sometimes, most of the time, the idea of coming in and learning through trauma and tribulation and suffering, you could say, how could you have a good time at that? Well, you're not having a good time at that, but you might have a good time when you get to a perspective about it.
Yeah.
When
you're able to separate and keep it over there.
Right.
And look back on it and learn from those images, learn how that created you to become the person that you are today. And to be able to work with like when I work with people who have PTSD, and we begin to rebuild from the beliefs, the stuck points that we've created, and we begin to open those up a little bit so that they're not so stuck, and regenerate new beliefs through the homework that they do.
That's so beautifully put.
And then they become these amazing people. I mean, I love it. I do CPT work. So when we get to session 7 and 8, and they're coming into the room dressed in a whole different way, and their hair's cut and groomed, and they're not wearing that hat anymore. They're not hiding. They're just opening up and expanding and becoming this flower, this human being. And then you can push it over there and focus on who you are now as a human being. Now that you've unlocked all of those pieces.
I love that. Unlocked. I think of them as treasures. Unlocking treasures. They don't look like treasures because maybe you feel awful and, so I see them as unlocking those treasures.
Yeah.
And, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That. And it's beautiful to witness, and we've witnessed it in ourselves also. So.
Yeah. And having breakthroughs, how that just shifts your life. When you have that aha moment, and it's like, oh, wow.
It's coming to me to say there was a book called it's called The Little Soul and the Sun. Did I tell you about this?
No.
It's basically a children's book, but I don't really think it's for children. I think it's for everyone. And it's that spiritual twist I was talking about before, about coming to earth and have this be a story or a dream that we created for our growth. So, and the book is available. So the gist of it is a little soul pulls on God's robe saying, I want to go to earth. I want to go to earth. And God says, why do you want to go to earth? I want to go to earth to learn about love, he says. And God says, well, but we're in heaven, and everything's love up here. Well, I want to go to earth. I want to go to earth. And so God says to the little soul, well, you know, when you go to earth, you learn things through the opposite. So you want to learn about love. Well, you might need to learn about it through the opposite. The little soul says, I still want to go. I still want to go. Okay. So God says, okay, you can go, but you need to bring friends with you. So go find some friends to bring with you. So the little soul goes, he finds a friend, and the friend says, oh yeah, I'll go with you, but you have to promise me that you'll remember one thing. And the little soul says, okay. And what is it? And the friend says, listen, I'm going to come and play the part of your abusive father. And you need to remember that I'm your friend.
Oh.
I was like, oh my God.
Wow, what a book.
And it's, you know, it's like it's a nice size book, but it doesn't have that many pages.
Does he remember?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember how the book ends. I think the book ends, they just go. And I think that's the point of the book.
Is what God's teaching them in heaven before they get there.
Yeah. And that, you know, when we're down here and we have so many troubles that, you know, and, you know, we are victimized. Everyone's been victimized literally in one way or another.
Yes.
Minor or major, covert or subtle.
Right.
And that because there aren't too many people that don't blame somebody for doing something to them. And, you know, and we work that through, right? You know, we work that through in all the different ways that we do it for ourselves and that we help people. And then if a person can have this little thought somewhere in their consciousness that, you know, on some level, I made this whole thing up for my benefit. And these other people who are playing these treacherous roles somehow are portraying that for me. It can shift something on the inside of you. And many of us are not interested in that approach or could even take that in. And that's fine. It's just a thought. And if you can use it, great. If you can't, you're going to find your way anyway.
That's right. So, one way or another. And this is the reason, everything that you're saying is the reason we have dreams to, when we go to sleep at night and we're in that relaxed state of consciousness and God, you know, drops those little messages into our head. Remember, this is something you need to learn. Remember, this is your friend. Remember that this person is here for this reason. Remember, this person is not with you anymore. Remember, whatever it is you need to remember.
Oh, and I love this person isn't with you anymore for some good reason as part of the lesson. That's so beautiful. Yeah. What a lovely place. What a lovely place to come to a close.
Yes.
That was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, here we are again. We'll look forward to seeing you again if you tune in. And thank you, Jeannine. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for joining me each week as we do these enlightening conversations and find out so much that we had no idea we were going to be opened up to in the beginning of the hour.
Yes. All right. So till next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.